Hello students, welcome to Learner's Planet. You are studying about the topic tissues. Tissues, they are the group of similar type of cells which are performing the same function. In the previous sessions, we have started with the plant tissues and we came to know about that these tissues are of two types in case of plants depending upon their dividing capacity. So the growing tissues which has a high power of cell division, they are known as what? Meristematic tissue. So depending upon their location and the growth, the site where they are supporting the growth they are of different kinds like apical, lateral and intercalary. Then if we have started with the permanent tissues. So permanent tissues are those which are the mature cells and they have lost the power of cell division, and even some of them may be comprised of dead tissues. So the simple permanent tissues are those which are made up of only single type of cells, whereas the another category is complex, which is made up of different type of cells. In the previous session, we have already studied about the simple permanent tissue. You remember what are the types? Parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. So in this session, now let us begin with the complex tissue. So we are saying that these complex tissues, they are those type of tissues which are made up of two or more different types of cells and which are performing a common function. So such tissues are known as complex tissues. Now, if there is something which is just coming in your mind, tissues, what is the definition of tissue? We are continuously, since beginning we are saying that tissues are the group of similar kind of cells which are performing same type of function. Now in this case, we are defining complex tissues as what? The group of cells, tissue which is made up of a group of different kind of cells and they are performing the same function. So isn't it controversial? So don't get confused here with this simple term similar and dissimilar. In this case, in the case of complex tissues, of course they are made up of two or more different kind of cells, but these different kind of cells, they are having same origin. They have been derived from same common type of basic cell, but they have been specialized in different ways. But of course, all these different forms, they are performing a same common function, and therefore we are calling it as a tissue only. All these different cells together, they are forming tissue. But since the basic property, the basic nature of these cells is little bit different, although the origin is same, but there is some differences in their basic features, so we are calling them as the complex tissue. The simple tissue is which one? Which is absolutely having same type of cells, which are structurally and functionally same. So this is how we can just clear the thing that why these tissues are known as complex. Now these complex tissues, they are mainly the conducting tissues. Now why we are calling them as conducting tissues? The reason is that because these tissues help in the conduction of various material. What does it mean? It means that the different substances like water, mineral, food, hormones, all these are supposed to be transported from one site to the another, and the tissue is helping in this type of transportation process, so these are known as conducting tissues. Now what do you think? From where do they get these basic substances which are being conducting in between the different parts of the plant? Let us say like water and minerals. From where do the plants obtain these two basic things? From the soil. So there is a special group of conducting tissue which helps in transportation of material from soil to the different parts of the plant. Right? So this is one of the type. The another we are saying the material is to be transported from a synthetic site to the storage site or to the utilization site. So what type of tissue it could be, or from where they can obtain such material? It is something we can say like let us say for example glucose, or the storage form of glucose, that is starch. Where this glucose is present, it is stored, it is synthesized in the leaves or the green part of the plants, right? So these glucose or the starch molecules, they have to be transported from their synthesis site to the storage site. Now where these material are to be stored? Where the carbohydrate, can you imagine some carbohydrate rich parts here? Let us say vegetables, so, or the fruit, they may be stored in the root, right? Or they may be required for energy extraction at various particular site in the plant. So from the leaves, these materials are conducted, they are transported in different directions. Let us say from leaves to the root, leaves to the flowers, or we can say like vegetables or the fruits. So direction is somehow different. So there is a basic difference between the conduction of various different kinds of material. Some material has to be transported in upward direction from soil to the upper parts. So such material is transported by a different kind of tissue. Similarly, if the material is to be transported from leaf to different parts, its nature should be different. So on this basis, that what type of material is being transported by the complex tissue or the conducting tissue, on this basis these are classified into two categories. And what are these two categories? They are xylem and phloem. So xylem is the one which helps in the transportation of water and mineral from the soil to the different parts or the upper part of the plant. Phloem, it is responsible for transportation of food material or different substances from their synthetic site to the storage site. Further, and now just imagine these plant tissues or the plants are having a great height. If they are herbaceous or very small herbs or shrubs, then the task is not very difficult. But if it is some big trees or tall trees, then do you think it is so easy? These tissues, simply if there are a small group of cells, are they able to perform the function? No. Basically, these tissues, they are forming the vessels, and these vessels serve as the conducting vessels, and thus they support the transportation process. Now since these are the vessel type system, so these tissues are also known as vascular tissue. Let us have look over this small flow chart. So complex tissue, we can define them as the one which is composed of more than one type of cell. So I hope it is very clear point now. Although they are made up of more than one type, but these cells are having same origin and together they are performing the same function. Thus we are calling it as a tissue, but of course it is a complex type. Now these are also known as vascular. Why? Because they form the vessels. They are arranged in the form of a vessel, and these vessels help in the transportation processes. Thus we are calling them as conducting tissues. Now these conducting tissues, if they transport food material, then these are known as phloem. Or if they are transporting water and minerals from the soil, then these are known as what? Xylem. So the material which is transported by xylem is always in a upward direction. So it supports only the unidirectional transport of material. Whereas the phloem, it is transported in different directions. This is why the nature and the structure of these two type of tissues is very different from each other. Now let us understand that how these tissues individually, they are supporting or they are performing this type of function. So first we are starting with the xylem tissue. Xylem tissue meant for what? For the conduction of water and minerals. And of course, where this water and mineral is present? In the soil. So the direction is of course upward. Now these tissues, we said that these are made up of different type of cells. So these different type of cells, they form different elements of the xylem tissue. What these elements are? They are number one, they are tracheids, vessels, xylem fibres and xylem parenchyma. Now each of these parts, they are very important and they are having its own major role in supporting the conduction of water and minerals in the upward direction. So these tracheids and vessels, these are meant for the conduction purposes. Fibers, they are providing the mechanical strength to the tissue. Then comes parenchyma. So this parenchyma is basically a storage type of tissue. So they are having the stored food material in them, which is providing energy for the functioning of these different parts of the tissue. Not only this much, they can also help in the site-wise transportation of these materials. So now we have to understand the role and structure of each part of the xylem tissue. You can see the diagram here. This particular diagram, it is showing the typical xylem tissue in the plants. So tracheids, they are present as surrounding cells and they are helping in the transportation of material from inside. Then these are in the center region. You can see this pink part. They are the vessel elements. Besides, they are surrounded by the xylem parenchyma cell. Now all these bundles, all these tissues, they are supported by the fibrous tissue in its surrounding, which is not highlighted in this as it is present in its surrounding. So these tissues, they are present as we can say in the central part of the tissue. If we observe the TS of stem, then we will find them as a bundle. They are present in the center of the cell. Like let us say, if we can show you here as a diagram, a brief picture can help you in understanding the exact location. See, if it is a TS of the cell, so there is an outer epidermis in the surrounding, then comes your endodermis, right? This is the outer epidermis, then in the endodermis, then in between there is the cortex, right? Let us highlight it. This is epidermis. Then inner layer is what? It is endodermis. Fine. In between these two layers, there is a presence of what? There is a cortex. Then the central part below endodermis, there is a region which is known as pith, or it is a central ground part of the stem or the plant. Now in these there are tissues present here, and these are arranged here as bundles here. So these are the group of phloem and the xylem tissues which are present here in this way. And the gaps in between these particular bundles, they are filled up by another parenchyma or different kind of tissue, which we can call as cambium also. So these conical structures in the central region, they are comprised of xylem and the phloem part. So this is the TS. So we can say they are arranged in this particular region. So as if this, you can say if this is the upper part, this is the lateral diagram of which is shown here in the diagram. It is the LS or the lateral section. So if you observe the upper part, you can see them arranged in these bundles in the center pit of the cell, for the plant. Now you can see here in the diagram that these are highlighted here separately also. These are the vessel elements, which are long vessel-like structures, whereas these tracheids, they are somehow tapering sort of structures. Now let us understand each and every element in details further. So basically the first part we are saying is the tracheids. Now these tracheids, they are the elongated cells as we have observed in the diagram. So these are the elongated cells which are actually tapering at their ends. That means their ends are pointed. So these ends are pointed. So how they are going to appear? They appear as a spindle shaped structures. So this is how they are located, or they are having the shape here. Now these cells, they are dead in nature. Another point is that the wall of the tracheid is not continuous. They are having pores in between. Now what these pores are known as? They are known as pits. It is written here in the center in the text also. So the wall contains pits. You know what are these pits? Pores. Of course there are pores, but how these pores are formed in the cells or the tracheids? Actually if you remember, we have studied about plasmodesmata. Remember when we were studying about cell wall? So if you remember, we have studied it at that time. We have highlighted this particular structure. Plasmodesmata, basically these are the gaps which are present in between the cell wall. So speciality here is that the wall of these tracheids or these xylem tissue, they are lignified. That means the cell wall is having the deposition of material known as lignin. So this lignin is actually not deposited over the plasmodesmata in the cell wall. The entire cell wall is there. Let us say this is this is the cell wall, and in between they are forming some junctions. So when the lignin starts depositing over the cell wall, it doesn't get deposited over the plasmodesmata, and therefore these plasmodesmata remains as a pore in the cell wall further. So in the case of when they form the tracheids, in the case of tracheids, these are equivalent to what? To the plasmodesmata. So pits, we can say that these are the non-lignified part of the plant, which is at the site where the plasmodesmata are present in the original cell wall. So therefore the pits are formed here in the case of xylem tissue. Now these are meant for the transport of water and minerals. From where? From the soil. Initially, the vessels are meant for the same purpose, but the tracheids also support for the same function. The water which is absorbed by the root from the soil is actually transported in the vessels or in the tissue, the xylem tissue, via these particular tracheids. Now the ends of the tracheids are tapering and they are closed. So how the internal water will come out from the cell? It is via pits. So these pits are present where? In the lateral direction. So tracheids, basically they help in the lateral transport of the water material. They help in transporting the mineral and the water in the cells which are surrounding, which are present in the TS section or in the lateral side of the tissue. This is how tracheids are playing the important role in the conduction of water and minerals. Next is a vessel. Vessels are the most important element of a xylem tissue. Now these tissues, they are long and they are tubular, or we can say that these are cylindrical kind of structures, and of course they are shorter than the tracheids. What we said tracheids, what is the shape? They are somehow, the ends are actually just tapering. Fine. In the case of vessels, the ends are not tapering, rather they are normally flattened. Now here these tissues, these cells, in the case of vessel element, they are arranged in the row. They are not just present as a bunch or a mass of cells. These cells are arranged properly end to end. So we can say how these will appear. You can see in the diagram also here. Here is the diagram. This pink region, you can see these cylinders or these tissues which are arranged as a, row in a row. So if this is one of the cell, the another cell is located above this cell, and similarly the cells are arranged in the row here. Second important thing regarding this is that they are present in a row, but of course in a like end to end way. Besides this, when they are arranged end to end, the middle section or the transverse wall of these particular cells gets dissolved. So they are actually forming the hollow structure here. If the transverse wall is actually dissolved, so how the structure will appear now here? We can say it is something like this as shown in the diagram. Now sometimes it is dissolved completely, sometimes it is dissolved partially. But such type of dissolution actually gives it a shape of a vessel, and therefore we are calling them as a vessel. Now these vessels, they are also known as trachea. Actually the meaning of trachea is vessel only, so they may also be sometimes known as a trachea. So these vessels, therefore they form a pipe-like structure and they support the conduction of water from soil to various parts of the plants. Now as they are forming hollow spaces in between, so what do you imagine? What will be the direction? It will go in this way. This is how the water will travel inside the vessel. Now since beginning we are saying that the flow of water in the vessel is always, or in the case of xylem, is always unidirectional. So this unidirectional flow is from soil to the upper part of the plants. So here the cells which are present in the epidermis of root, they actually absorb the water present in the soil. Once it is absorbed by the epidermal cell, it is transported to the tracheids and the vessels. Now from vessel, the material will be transported in the upward direction. This is how these vessels help in the transportation of material. Next is xylem fibers. Now these xylem fiber is a very important thing and is of course dead and supportive in function. Now these dead and supportive, can we say that if these are dead and supportive in nature, then what type of tissue they may be? And we are calling them as fibers. So any word or any term comes in your mind when we are using these three terms with respect to a plant tissue? Exactly, the sclerenchyma. We have studied about sclerenchyma, right? What are the basic properties? They are dead in nature, they are supportive in nature, and the cells are fibrous in nature. So these fibres or the xylem fibers, they are made up of sclerenchyma tissue. So sometimes it is also known as xylem sclerenchyma. Which type? The fibrous. So these fibres, they are, as they are dead in nature, and what is the next important property? That they are having lignified cell wall. So dead nature plus deposition of lignin makes it mechanically strong cell or mechanically strong tissue. So these are arranged in the side wall or in surrounding these xylem tissue in these bundles, and thus they provide strength, they provide energy, or they just make them strong to stand erect inside the plant. This is how they are providing important mechanical strength to the tracheids and the vessels. So location is in surrounding the tracheids and the vessels, and of course they are, if they are present, then its basic property will provide it hardness and stiffness or rigidness. So this is how they are so important when they are present in the xylem tissues also. The next is what? That is xylem parenchyma. So what these xylem parenchyma do? You remember what is the basic property of parenchyma? They are living cells, they are having the nucleus, they have large intercellular spaces. What else? If you remember, you have to just remind the point that we have studied in the parenchyma tissue. So basically these parenchyma tissue, they are having these basic properties, as well as cell wall is thin, right? So they are made up of cellulose, but it is thin as compared to what? As compared to meristematic tissue. So such basic thing, another important point is regarding vacuole. In this case, the vacuole is large. So if the vacuole is large, how these nucleus will appear here? The nucleus will be pushed towards the side. The presence of vacuole is actually meant for, or it is actually helping for storage of food material. And why this storage of food material needed in these parenchyma tissue in surrounding the xylem part or in surrounding the tracheid and the vessels? The reason is that these cells, the tracheids as well as the vessels, they need a constant supply of energy so as to conduct water and mineral in the upward direction. So from where this energy will come? From the food material. And where this food is present? It is present inside the parenchyma tissue. And these parenchyma obtain the food material from its synthesis site. So basically parenchyma is not directly helping in the transportation of material, but it is supporting the vessels and the tracheids for its own maintenance and its own proper functioning. Not only this much, these parenchyma, they can also help in the lateral transport of water and mineral. See, tracheids are having pits in between, so they help in the conduction of lateral sides. Now, in the lateral sides, where the material will go basically, it will go in the parenchyma tissues. And then from there, it will be transported to different parts through osmosis or different particular processes. So, parenchyma is having dual function here, that is storage of food, and secondly, the transport of material in the lateral direction. So, vessels or xylem, they actually transport the material in upper direction only. But of course, the lateral side also needs the material, and that is supported by the parenchyma tissue. These parenchyma, they are living in nature. So basically, if we observe the different elements now, so we can say that these elements of xylem at maturity, they consist of dead cells. The major part of the xylem tissue is comprised of dead cells, and they are bound with lignified cell walls. Now generally these dead cells, they show the deposition of lignin in their cell wall. So such type of cell wall which is having lignin deposited over there is known as lignified cell wall. Now all we are saying the xylem tissue, they are comprised of dead cells. Which one? They are tracheids, they are vessel elements and the fibers. Except parenchyma cell, each part or each cell is dead in nature. So xylem is comprised of dead cells in majorly, and xylem parenchyma is of course a living type of cell here. Now the thing is, where they are located. Where are these xylem tissue present? So these are present in root, in stem, in leaf of higher plants. Now if we are saying, actually wherever these are present, they are interconnected. You remember for the vessels, what we said, that they are arranged in a row, and the transverse wall of these cells is dissolved partially or completely. So such type of arrangement makes the vessels inside the different parts wherever it is present. So from root till leaf, they form a continuous channel inside. Now we can say that they are not present in alone. They are present together with the phloem. That means the phloem and xylem, they are different kind of tissue meant for conduction of different material, but they are present or they are located together in a particular region. And such type of bundle or such type of arrangement in which phloem and xylem are present together is known as vascular bundle. So these vascular bundles, we said they are present in the central region of the root or the stem or leaf stalk or whatever. So in that case, we have already studied about its location. It is central, it is present in the central region. Suppose this is DS of a cell. So these particular bundles, they are located in the form of cones in the central part of the stem. Whether it is a stem or root or whatever, this is how they are located. And the space in between, that is actually filled by the different type of tissues. Now inside these conical structures, there is a location for what? For the phloem and for the xylem tissue. Whether it is a root or it is a stem or leaf. In leaf, we can say the veins or the midribs, those are the location for such type of tissues. So next thing is that you can see in this diagram also, if this is a particular central vein of a leaf, then we can actually clarify the point easily now. See, here this is the vein. Where it is located, just follow the arrow here. So they are located here in the central part. You know, these are the leaf structures. There is a stalk or petiole. It is having a midrib. It is having these fibrous veins. Now in the veins, in the central region, there is a location for the xylem and for the phloem tissue. We can see it is highlighted here in this particular diagram. This is a TS site. So in this case, we can say the centrally located is a xylem and the phloem. Of course, they are in between filled by different cells also. So this is where the location is for xylem and the phloem tissue. Now what are the functions? Since beginning we are saying the tracheids and vessels, they conduct water and minerals upwards from roots to the stem and leaves. As they are forming a continuous channel, so these type of tissues are able to absorb water and minerals and transport it to the higher part of the cells or higher part of the plants. So now here we can show you the direction that how they are actually absorbing the food or water and the nutrients from the soil. So these are the roots and they are having the hairs that we have already studied. So this is a structure which is showing the epidermis here, and the extensions of these particular epidermis are forming the root hair. So these root hairs are having very thin lining. They are in direct contact with the soil particles. Now soil particles, these are the soil particles which are having a space in between. Now this space is basically filled up with what? With the water and the different minerals. Now water plus mineral will go into it is absorbed or it is entering inside this epidermis through osmosis. Now after entering these particular epidermal cells, they will reach towards the center part of the root, and over there the material is actually transported into the tracheids and the vessels. Once they come in the vessel, a force will be exerted due to which the material or the water tends to move steadily in the upward direction. So when they are moved upward, further they will be transported to different parts. Besides this, in the case if this becomes older, the xylem tissue, as old as it grows, it starts constituting the wood of the plant. Now later on they do not take part in the conduction process. Young xylem is involved in the conduction process. The old tissue is meant for providing mechanical strength to the plant, because they have to withstand at a particular location, and most of the part of these tissues is dead in nature. So therefore these dead cells or these dead tissues, they provide mechanical strength to the plant, besides helping in conduction of material from soil to the different parts. Now the strength is basically provided by which part? Of course it is because of the vessels, because of the tracheids, and because of the fibers, because these three are the dead part of the xylem tissue. Vessel and tracheids, they are involved in the transport of material as they are forming the vessels or the channels. Of course, the another kind, that is parenchyma tissue, it is meant for storage of material. Which material? Food or the various required material for the maintenance of these tissues. This is how the xylem tissue is supporting the entire mechanical function as well as the transportation function in the case of plants. This is all about xylem tissue. Next, what we have to study is about the phloem tissue. That how those phloem actually support the transport of food from upper direction to the different directions. So that we are going to study in the next session. Till then, thank you so much. Have a nice day. We'll catch you soon in the next session.